A mental health crisis sometimes leads to a call for authorities to assist in intervening. In Topeka, those calls activate a crisis intervention team. Ashley Bryan with Vallejo Behavioral Health is the coordinator. Captain Colleen Stewart is with the Topeka Police Department. Behavioral health is one of the areas that fall under her area of leadership. Thank you, ladies, for being here to really dive into what happens, because I think that is a question for people. The crisis intervention team, Ashley, what is it and who's part of it?
Yeah. So our crisis intervention team has two different teams. We have a first shift team and a second shift team. Both of those have a police officer, and they're partnered with a social worker. And so they go out and respond to various mental health calls in the community.
How would those calls come in, and what would the person be kind of asking or saying is going on?
Yeah, so they typically come through dispatch. But we also have individuals that contact us through email, through our co-responder cell phone that we give out, and
then they'd be activated, and they would go sometimes a call of a person who maybe is having suicidal thoughts, suicidal threats, self-harm, those sorts of calls.
Yep.
What we're talking about. So you get one of those calls, Captain Stewart. What happens? How does the response work?
Well, I think it's important to know, first of all, that the reason why an officer is alongside a social worker is not because we believe that there's automatically a crime involved. We actually believe that there are many of these situations where jail or punishment is not the answer. So our behavioral health unit officers are specially trained in mental health first aid and crisis intervention training. So when they receive the call, they and their co-responder, the social worker, will respond to the address or the location and de-escalate, try to find out what type of crises the person is experiencing right then and there, and take every possible strategy to de-escalate and to provide the resources at that moment. We don't leave a person alone if we know that they're in some type of crisis. We're there for the long term, and that's actually the benefit for a BHU officer versus a typical patrol officer. That officer and that social worker can spend as much time as necessary working through whatever is happening at that time, whatever that person is experiencing at that time.
How does it work for calls that perhaps don't have the best outcome, whether that terrible outcome is what you arrive on scene and find? How do you support maybe the loved ones, the family members, others who might have been at that scene as well?
The same way that we would support the person actually in crisis. You know, we recognize the trauma that happens when something, your worst day occurs. So we provide that same support to the family members who have witnessed this or who have just been provided that news. And not only that, but again, we offer them the resources that the community has to offer. For the department, on the department side, we have a chaplaincy program that we may offer for even further support. So again, we try not to leave anyone alone. We try to leave them with more information than when we first arrived.
Why was this recognized as a need, Ashley? What were you all encountering at Vallejo and alongside the police department that made you all decide we need to have this type of response in Topeka?
Yeah, I mean, I think responding to calls where maybe like weapons or other things are involved, that maybe it's not completely safe to have just social workers going by themselves, to have that extra security of having an officer, but also really to rebuild that relationship. You know, most people don't call the police on their best day. And some people have had some pretty terrible interactions in the past with police. And so alongside this program, we're able to really rebuild that relationship.
It also should be mentioned that for those who maybe aren't in a situation where it leads to a call to 911 or police involvement, there is a crisis center at Vallejo, correct?
Yes.
How does it operate, and what can people do if they need that help?
Yes, so our crisis center is open 24/7, 365 days a year. We always have a clinician available to speak with someone. So if anyone ever just needs to come in and talk or feels like they need crisis services, they can just come in, speak with a clinician, and then we can kind of assess and go from there.
And Captain Stewart, how many officers have this special behavioral training right now?
Well, I will tell you there's a difference between CIT and our CIT teams. Nearly 100% of our officers have gone through the CIT training, which is a week long. The officers who specialize in our co-responder program with the social worker, we actually have three officers. and plus the sergeant. So I guess that would
But
make
everybody with that training is fantastic because you never know who you're going to encounter.
absolutely.
Great team to have. Thank you so much, Ashley and Captain Stewart, for letting us know more about it. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Still ahead, we are going to hear how mental health struggles can take many forms and faces. Meet two people who share their stories next.